Lost in the fog of a cosmic storm, floating on whimsical wavelengths is the norm. Dancing through the stars, chasing spectrums of light, riding the waves that are just out of sight.
Welcome back to Whimsical Wavelengths, and part 2, where I continue to make the case that igneous is bliss. Last episode was the prelude. Or, if you want, the last episode we discussed the cascades and volcanic crises in general. Now is the main event. That's right, I got together with some colleagues from my past university where I did my graduate degrees, Simon Fraser University, and watched Dante's Peak. Now, this ended up being more work than I bargained for, but it was fun, and you can definitely tell that it was getting late in the evening by the time I turned off the mic. Well, and how it worked? It was recorded in a basement during the movie, i.e. we all sat together in a living room. So the audio is not amazing. It's not like everyone had a mic. And I think I was a little closer to the mic than everyone else, so perhaps my voice is a little too loud. That said, I do try to make sure that everyone else there gets a chance to talk, so hopefully you won't hear me too much. Overall, I recorded throughout the entire movie our reactions and general nerdy discussion about volcanoes. The problem is that that's just way too much. And I didn't know how to put it all together. But this is a podcast, and I have a real job, and it's a content-crushing machine. So I've attempted to gather what I could, the best discussion, the reactions, most of it actually when it was paused, for all of you to hear. I will add context throughout to make it a bit more sensical. And if I do this again, I really need to find a better way for the audio, etc. Maybe I'll do it all through streaming. I'm not sure yet, because there's definitely ways to do that while keeping the audio nice and crystal clear of people's voices, and then you don't hear anything going on in the background. Furthermore, and this is really important for me, is to let me know what you think. Send me an email on what you think and if I should do more of these. I mean, there's so many great movies or bad movies. Movies that you could do this with a series of people that are, have the experience to really talk about it and laugh about it in a way that the general public just can't. Some examples would be Twister and Contagion. There's lots of candidates, and really they do cover a wide range of scientific disciplines. Even Jurassic Park. So without further ado, here we go. Okay. So ideally, using your best voice, you're going to introduce yourself, and we'll kind of go from there, and I will add things after the fact to make it more understandable to someone who isn't watching the film, obviously. Hopefully I'm quick on the button, because I don't think it's a good idea for me to record the entire movie.
No.
No, because it just creates too much work.
Yeah.
So, we're all volcanologists here, pretty much. We're all part of the same, either past or present in the same research group of...
Volcanology rocks.
I meant introduce yourself, Dr. Williams-Jones.
It's not my group. Yeah. It's the Physical Volcanology group. So I'm Glenn Williams-Jones, and I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. Like to work on volcanoes and bring together bright people studying fun stuff, so we keep interested about volcanoes and natural hazards.
Oh, I'm Lilian, and then I'm a PhD student from Glenn Williams-Jones lab, and then I'm doing nature hazard communication, so I'm a science communicator.
I'm Antonina Calahorrano. I'm a recently graduated PhD student from the Physical Volcanology group, and I've worked in an active volcano, and I've been present in active volcanic eruptions.
Hi, I'm Juan, and I'm a soon-to-be graduated part of Dr. Glenn's group. I mostly work with volcano and mountain data, but I'm more of a time series data analysis guy.
Seismologist, you might say.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, a little bit of this and that.
Yeah, so I'm Yannick. I graduated as a PhD with Glenn in 2020, and now I'm a volcanologist at the Geological Survey of Canada, and I'm more into the physical volcanology geochemistry.
And I am, of course, your host, and you hear a lot about me, so we'll just continue. Just to set the scene a little bit to understand the next part of the conversation, the movie opens with the main character, who is played by Pierce Brosnan, in what we are pretty sure is the next to Pinatubo during that volcanic crisis. And I'm talking a little bit back and forth with my other fellow participants about ballistics. And we have some pretty good discussion about that kind of stuff, and hopefully you enjoy it, and that's really what this is all about. This is really the beginning of the movie. It's actually really funny. So when I first got the movie and put it on, I was like, wait, is this the wrong movie? Is this like Jesus Christ Superstars?
It starts off there in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think it's the Pinatubo?
Well, was that the Americans were in there?
No, for sure. But this is before.
What year is that movie?
This is 97, so it is possible.
It is.
But I didn't really think of Pinatubo as having ballistics like this.
No, it doesn't.
I have to say that the ash on the car
That's realistic.
is realistic.
Yeah.
That was just us going to Cotopaxi, okay, we can't see anything.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Nothing else.
But it's like this next upcoming scene is what I remember. I remember being like, wow.
Except it was more sticky, actually.
A wee bit later.
Exactly. And when my first interaction with ballistics, again, it was after the fact, but working in Costa Rica on Araná, a little volcano, maximum elevation 1,800 meters or something, 1,600. But we were up on the flank, and you could see, okay, yeah, that's a fresh impact.
Yeah.
Okay, we're too high. We're gonna move down a bit. So total horizontal trajectory was hundreds of meters, not kilometers.
And it's not a ball of fire.
Yeah, but it's not a flaming ball of
Yeah,
fire,
it's a
like
rock.
it's launched out of a catapult, attacking a castle. That you could do is like, Monty Python, they're throwing ballistic volcanoes at us, oh my god!
In the night, you would see them like reddish because they
was
are
it glowing? But they're not flames.
But yeah, not
pouring
flames.
out.
Yeah.
And you can get beautiful pictures, especially when Tungurahua was active.
Yeah.
about 50
Oh yeah, I
years
mean the
ago.
ballistics.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you
Yeah,
could.
for
you
the
could,
proximal
you could,
stuff coming down the flank.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you can literally what they did some work in the monitoring agency of Ecuador. They did some work analyzing the size of the ballistics, the crater that they left,
Yeah.
and then trying to figure out
Yeah.
what was the actual trajectory, of course,
Yeah.
the angle and the force, which were they ejected, and then try to know exactly how these ballistics could impact the nearby structures from these little towns that were close to the crater.
But again, from like a damage perspective, when you're on that kind of ballistic trajectory, there's enough energy in there that something small will kill you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And it's not necessarily because the molten, yes, it's the velocity at which it's impacting. So but yeah, flaming cannonballs that are all the same size. No. Not so realistic.
A wee bit later.
Where people were like, "Don't tell me about this because it's going to impact on my property values. I don't want to know."
Mammoth.
Yeah, Mammoth Mountain, Long Valley. So it was big ski country.
Yeah.
Well, basically the same thing.
When did this happen?
That was in the.
Perhaps one of the most important parts of the movie is where they're starting to talk with the town and what the implications for the volcanic activity is going to be. Dr. Glenn Williams-Jones is mentioning Mammoth Mountain, and he gets the date wrong, so I've edited it out and putting it in here as 1982, which is an area in California next to a dormant volcano. The USGS tried to give a lowest alert level to try to make sure that they were able to get more monitoring equipment etc. into the area. The problem was that the local people and the media didn't have an idea of what they were talking about and started sensationalizing it as if there was an impending doom, which it never erupted. And so, with tourism plummeting and everything else, there was a lot of bad blood. And it goes down in one of those very interesting failures of communication about volcanology and the hazards associated with it.
Would sometimes know that they are in an area that they shouldn't be building on, but sometimes they would just like, don't tell me, I don't want to know. So it's basically the same, and that's really like normal. Human nature, money, politics.
Only town in the politically inappropriate.
But at the same time, of course, they are going to make the boss the bad guy, but he is doing a sensible thing, recommending, okay, let's just put more instruments, see how.
Yeah, I mean, you flare up, you've got one thing, it's like, maybe we need to.
After we watched a little bit more of the movie, some of that I've kept out because the movie was too loud and you can't really hear our voices, we decided to pause to discuss a little bit more of what has happened. One of the things that did happen was it panned over to two young lovers, probably teenagers, going for a skinny dip in some hot springs near the volcano. These volcanoes across the Cascades often do have hot springs associated with them. Needless to say, in the movie, they jumped in and then the water started to boil and boiled them to death. Yes, gruesome. Very gruesome. He also went and collected pH values of a local stream and got something ridiculously low. And I'll let our talk and banter take it away from here for a little bit. Biggest one for me in the beginning part. Like everything else besides the ballistics is fine.
It's pretty good, yeah.
It's actually realistic.
Yeah.
Even how everything's set up, except the goddamn hot springs.
Yeah.
And the pH.
Yeah.
The pH, what was it? 3.5?
3.5, and he wasn't fussed. Like, he should be going, it's a pH 6.
Yeah.
There's something going on here. We're at 3.5. He'd be like, no kids, you're not going anywhere near the water.
No.
Anywhere in the area.
Yeah, like
you close access to the lake. You
close access to everything.
Yeah.
I think that's the main issue with the story so far, that yes, they are making like, oh yeah, Pierce Brosnan is the only one that is on the right, but at the same time he is not concerned enough, and no one else is concerned enough by the readings. He's just like, oh, I feel like something's wrong. But
To me, the other, and this is blatantly obvious, right? It's the speed at which things are happening.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Because if you're
condensed.
the issue is you're having all these earthquakes at 10 to 20 kilometers depth.
Yeah.
You have nothing going on at the surface.
And now all of a sudden
you have no earthquakes from 10 kilometers to the surface, but you have all this surface activity.
Yeah.
Like something's wrong.
Yeah, if you've got so CO2 degassing, sure, that could be coming up, but you should still have something at the 5 to 6K range, seismically.
Yeah,
if you're getting,
Yeah.
that level of degassing, you've had
And by K we mean kilometers because we're Canadian.
But to acidify that lake,
you need something really shallow.
Well, and you need very, very shallow magma, because it's not just the CO2 that's going to acidify it to that degree. If they're already smelling, this
sulfur.
Smells like my room, you're smelling hydrogen sulfide. This is not just a natural breakdown of the geothermal system. There is shallow SO2 degassing at 2 kilometers.
It would have already erupted.
yeah.
But the problem is you don't have any earthquakes to suggest it should.
Yeah. So it's an aseismic event like Popocatépetl, which was putting out 100,000 tons per day without any seismicity.
What?
Yeah, in the early 2000s.
Was it just because they missed the deeper stuff?
No, it was there'd been basically. I think it was kind of like the post 1980 saying that's where the previous activity had opened up the plumbing system. There was renewed magma migration without significant seismic activity, but there was a huge change in degassing and sulfur dioxide flux, And literally, they were doing co-spec work. Went from background levels of 5 to 10,000 tons per day, which is already really a lot, but Popo is a biggie. But it went up to something on the order of 100,000 tons per day. So orders of magnitude increase in degassing. But the seismologists were like, yeah, there's nothing happening. Geochemists were like, yes, there is.
But again, in that particular instance,
it was already an active system.
Yeah,
Everything
you're not
opened
awakened.
up. This is brand new, and there's no with all of this these thermal springs popping along. There's still a whole heck of a lot of ice. Not seeing a lot of remobilization, melting of the
glacier actually on the edifice.
Yeah.
Yeah, still got all that snow up there.
Yeah, Lahar's, it'll come.
I could think that maybe the hot spring scene, hot spring scene would have been much better just doing something similar to what really does happen in Chile's Cerro Negro, which is near the lakes. There's so much CO2 that if you camp there, immediately you are in danger of just passing out and then you are dead.
Yeah.
These people that are going for a little hot spring dip, skinny dip, they could have just passed out and then they find something and then yes, there's a million different explanations why these people
why they drop dead.
Yeah.
Because that's the whole thing with CO2, you don't know.
You don't know what
happened.
happened.
Or better yet, do that as like a halfway through during the increase.
Yeah, but I mean, this is the setup for later.
I know, but it's almost like you needed
another step.
You needed the seismology to give you the setup.
Yeah.
Somebody to go, oh my God, we should do something
but
about
the
it.
CO2
And then two people die from random.
I mean, the CO2, it's a classic case in Congo where you had these the degassing along the fissure and these small. It's not kipuka. I can't remember what the local term was. But these small hollows that were full of CO2, and the children were dying because they would go into the hollow and all of a sudden the CO2 was above their head and they would asphyxiate. Adults would walk through, it would be knee or hip height and they're feeling fine. And then they would bend down to get the children, and then all of a sudden they start to feel woozy because of this
CO2
incredible, just thick layer of dense CO2 sitting there. So your point, Antonina, that would have made more sense. Somebody goes and has a nap and doesn't wake up.
You could have changed it into a video that I just saw like a few weeks ago. That was a guy basically. He was in the middle of a forest. I cannot remember which one. I don't know if he said that in the video, but he basically was in the forest and he saw a cave, and he said like, oh, if rain starts suddenly, would you use this cave to protect yourself? And he said like, yeah, that's like your first thought, like, yeah, it's a cave, I just go in and that's it. But he said that would be not the ideal thing if this cave is just filled with CO2. So basically he light up a match.
Okay, to see.
He just put his hand into the cave with the match light on, and then the match immediately like just stop. And he said, okay, this is a cave which has entrapped CO2, and that's a way to know that you can go inside or not.
Yeah. Or you're in the BC context and there's something else living in there already. It's like, no, I don't want visitors. Go away.
A wee bit later.
Scientific.
Fly around the mountain, take some co-spec readings, see how much sulfur dioxide there is up there.
Use a co-spec, measuring sulfur dioxide. They got that
From now
right.
on, everything comes from me.
Yeah, except there's no roads.
More town meetings.
No, they fly by helicopter,
Call them.
which is doable.
Okay.
Sure, in 97?
Yeah.
They did
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
What volcano did it? They fly in helicopter and they drop the equipment from a line.
Yeah.
Where was that?
Because we've flown, you can do, I've done co-spec on helicopter. If you get the rotation rate sinking, it's fine. But dropping, slinging, they didn't sling the co-spec.
No, it wasn't the co-spec, it was some other equipment.
Okay. Well, then they did on St. Helens on the new dome. They drop GPS. They call them spiders.
Yeah.
GPS onto the domes.
Please. Cappuccino, espresso, cafe latte.
I'll just have
The problem is it's degassing like that, and you don't get not getting an immediate SO2 flux measurement. He's getting an absorption peak that you then have to take back to the lab and process manually to figure out what was the concentration. There's no way you can just go, oh yeah, because there's no gas here. No.
In 97.
Not with the co-spec.
Right.
With the DOAS or the fly spec, yes, we can do that in quasi-real time.
Right. I've only ever used the fly spec.
Yeah. So with the co-spec, you have a paper chart recorder, and you're manually measuring the curve underneath, but you got to be doing profiles, some kind of a traverse.
I guess you could take a mobile dose, but then you have to go through like
You
below the plume.
still have to be below the plume. So ideally, you'd have a multi-gas, and then you could get direct SO2 concentrations, because that's just an absorption profile. How much UV is absorbed.
And now the movie introduces a new character, a robot, who can do a few things.
She's gone. So this Dante robot actually was a JPL or NASA robot called Dante. Yeah, they tested it on Etna, and they were going to take it down to Antarctica. They wanted to take it all the way to freaking Erebus to test it because.
Just jumping a little bit further ahead, now this robot Dante is in the crater and is stuck.
But he's wearing a gas mask, but not a helmet.
Not a helmet, yeah.
And he's got his Hawaiian shirt on.
And why would you need a gas mask when there's nothing degassing?
Yeah.
They've already measured it.
Coming in crystal clear.
Yeah, and there was none.
There was none.
I'm more concerned about the lack of.
Okay, now you can. And this is not how you.
You know, jump into the...
Smart idea.
No, it's not all right.
Gloves?
Gloves?
No gloves?
Listen,
And like, you're just propelling yourself. Like, pin him down to something. Get some.
maybe get your backside back out there.
Anyone who's ever worked on a volcano and hiked across it has like leather gloves ready to go every time. A wee bit later.
No! You don't smell sulfur dioxide coming out of water. Hydrogen sulfide, yes.
You don't really smell it, but it does have a certain feeling.
Yes,
in the
but you
back
don't
of-
smell it. Certainly
No.
not in water.
No.
Hydrogen sulfide coming out, absolutely. Rotten egg smell, 5 ppm, no issues.
At this point in the movie, the volcanic activity's getting real. In fact, Pierce Brosnan's character is now like, yeah, we need to let everybody know and we need to get people out now.
You can call 7,000 families, or at least
No,
2,000 families.
in Squamish, it's door to door. So part of the response to a crisis is, because cell phone coverage is really spotty, is the local neighbors go out and the fire department, they will go around with a siren,
Yeah.
and then people will be going door to door knocking, saying you need to evacuate now because it's a wildfire or there's a flood or what have you. Yeah, so when it's a small town,
They usually have the community side.
yeah.
But then it's the community that does it,
Yes.
right? It's not
Well-
just the mayor and...
No, like the mayor and the civil defense.
A wee bit later.
But yeah, this explosive sort of, day-side, andesite system now ramps into full-on low viscosity basalts.
And I guess there's no reaction of the lava going into the water.
Yeah, that was
No, there's a little bit of steam there, but this is a big lake. Uh-oh.
72 hours later, all the fish die. And the lake
That's a lot of
is
That's
acid.
That's a lot of fish in the pond.
Yeah. And you're in a metal boat. Bad idea.
Metal boat still won't. It's not that fast.
No, not that fast. But you're actually better off with a kid's rubber dinghy
Yeah, for sure.
than a metal boat.
As far as long term is concerned.
Yeah, but this is rapid.
Activity has turned the lake acid.
That lake is so big, it would take...
Yeah,
Acid
years.
is metal.
this is where our comments about the pH levels, which is a measurement of acidity, in the waters near the beginning of the movie really come home to roost. They are attempting to cross that lake in a metal boat, and the boat eventually starts to take on water, and the grandmother decides to jump in the water and pull the boat to safety. There is so much wrong with this particular instance, and we do cover some of it right there. Significantly more was recorded between this point and the end of the movie, but there was just a little too much sound from the movie, as well as it was a bit disjointed and I didn't know how to use it. So from here on out, we're going to be doing our kind of like debrief, the end of the discussion. The movie's over. Maybe the credits are still running in the background, but generally it's a lot quieter, and this is what we would do if we were just discussing it amongst ourselves. Keep in mind, we all know that the microphone is recording, but I really don't think it affected what we talked about all that much. It's the best volcano disaster movie ever made.
I always thought it was sort of
Yeah.
B+ for science, being generous, in comparison to other volcano movies out there.
Oh, no,
You
no.
know.
In comparison,
Yeah, yeah,
this
yeah.
is an A+.
Ah,
In comparison to actual science,
no.
then it's like a B- for first year.
Well, again, I guess the key thing is sort of, this is Hollywood.
Yeah.
Sure.
And as we know, there's always that sort of balancing between being spectacular and real. And it's always like, but hang on, real is already pretty frigging spectacular.
Yes.
Oh, come on.
That's
If
what I
they
was
had
going to
just
say.
didn't do the basaltic lava
Lava
flows
flows.
and
Yeah, they
the
could've
weird
stuck to the
acid
Lahars.
lake,
Yeah.
they could have stuck to the rest of it
Yeah.
without the weird
Yeah.
pH.
But
and-
that's the
And-
problem when you get the writers going in there. Oh, but I've seen this and we've got to do it because.
But people expect lava from volcanoes,
Yeah.
therefore
I know, but
exactly.
Yeah.
putting some pyroclastic flows, pyroclastic density currents
Yeah.
would have been much more spectacular, in my opinion. You have real life people that have been able
Yeah.
to avoid them by going to a
Yeah.
higher area.
Yeah,
to
exactly.
Yeah.
Or actually having a viscous lava flow on the flank, a la meager,
Sure. Yeah.
transitioning into a block and ash flow. You
Yeah.
can imagine that being really frigging spectacular,
Yeah.
right?
Sure.
You're like, okay, here's the lava flow. Oh, it's okay.
It's
You know,
slow.
Dante, this is going to be slow.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's
It's
it's breaking up, and we've got a block and ash flow coming down at us.
Okay, so what Dr. Glyn Williams-Jones is talking about, just to the north of Vancouver, British Columbia, where we were recording this, is a volcano called Mount Meager. About 2,000, off the top of my head, no, I'm not going to look this up, 2,460 years ago, hopefully that's correct, there was a kind of a Plinian-type eruption. Then eventually it oozed out a very viscous, so very thick, very slow-flowing lava, what we call a dome. The dome came out on the side of a hill and eventually collapsed, but it was still hot and it filled up a river valley. So you had this block and ash flow as it exploded across the valley, filling it up and damming a river behind it. It would have been amazingly epic. And that's what he's referring to here.
Just
Yeah.
getting the scientists a bit more concerned
Yes, before.
and maybe getting the politics in the middle.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, I guess that they could have deflected more the blame into the politicians, which is
often-
actually a reality.
Well, politicians and the civil defense.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, because there's no way USGS, in a crisis, they are giving information
Advice.
directly to the public.
Yeah.
But they are very
Yeah.
careful not to make any public statements
Yeah.
about
No.
what you should
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
because they leave that to the policymakers.
Yes, for
Yeah.
sure.
It's the science. It's the.
But they will
the
be
expert
alarmed.
advice.
Oh yes, they will be alarmed, and they will
Yeah.
still give that kind of alarm to the public at large through ways of
Yeah.
doing press releases and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
You
But
would
again-
have someone specifically for that. You wouldn't have Pierce Brosnan doing the
Yeah,
pH
random.
measurements and then the seismic instrument installment and then talking to the public. That's just not.
Well, and exactly, you would be talking like, where was the governor? Why weren't the other levels of the bureaucracy involved? And especially after this is post St. Helens, which again there was lessons learned, but they still knew that there's a procedure. The USGS is not the decision maker; they're the experts, just like any volcano observatory. It's the civil defense or the National Guard or whatever. But it's the governing, the political, bureaucratic infrastructure that make those decisions, not the random scientists. And yes, there's not a singular scientist that figures it all out. Oh yes, and I've got a few random.
Even if there are, that doesn't really matter, because you could argue there has been cases where there was just a couple.
Sure.
Like a handful. Like even Pt2 had one team.
Yeah.
There wasn't just one person, but it was one team.
It was a team. But I think that's the key thing is in most cases, in pretty much every case, it's always a team.
Sure.
Because it's never going to be one random person.
No, because you need somebody to bring in the gas geochemistry. You need one person to bring in the seismic. You need one person to bring in the deformation. And then you have the team, which usually includes somebody which has the chops for being able to interact with the media, and they will give the press conferences. It's not the seismologist giving the press conferences. It's the
comms person.
It's the comms person who usually also has a science background, often a volcanology background and a volcanic crisis, but they are the comms person, and they did that during the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens. They had comms people. It was not the seismologist or the deformation person who was bouncing laser beams off the thing, off the edifice.
Although in the second activity at St. Helens in 2006, what the USGS did start to do is it wasn't just a comms person, but they were going through a team of the scientific team of those who were comfortable presenting in front of the media, but everyone already had an understanding of this is the science that we're going to bring to the media now, and these other things are not relevant right now, or we don't have good confidence on our interpretation of this, but they recognized that there was value in having multiple people from the team speaking to the.
You can say thanks to Hawaii on that one.
Yeah, I'm certain. Yeah.
So Hawaii has a volcano watch.
Yeah.
And so it's anonymous, but each group takes turns. Sometimes it's actually volunteers that write it. So those are people, like I once was a volunteer there as a graduate student or as whatever. So I'm somebody with a degree there volunteering. And so sometimes this gets put to them. But it's a volunteer thing, and they write it, and the science, it's looking back in past and history, and it's a similar idea. So it wouldn't surprise me that they borrow those ideas from Hawaii at Hawaii.
Well, and it makes sense because then the broader community are recognizing that it is a team. That there is and then also if you coordinate things, you can bring in. Well, the earlier press conference today was given by the geophysical team. Here's the seismologists. And there's some gas geochemists that are also speaking, or they're going to touch on another aspect, or now it's about ash health and these kinds of things. But everything was very accelerated in this eruption. Very accelerated.
72 hours.
At the same time, blunders can still be made because
stuff happens.
Still happen. Yeah, things still happen in a pace or in a time that you don't expect.
Sure, but if they had just gotten rid of the basaltic lava flow and the acid lake
Well,
and
the
boiling.
magnitude 8 earthquakes.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure, but I mean, some of that is perception, right?
Yeah. Well, no, when entire buildings are
No,
collapsing.
Yeah.
Pass just
For some reason, I'm willing to give that a pass. I don't know why, but I'm willing to give that a pass because it's
Because
part
it's
of the
not
wall.
volcanic.
But no, because it's also just like it's Hollywood.
Yeah. Well, that's like the lava thing. That's Hollywood.
I guess, but it's just not reasonable.
Well, but neither is the magnitude 8.
No, but having earthquakes is reasonable.
Yeah,
having
yeah.
a fluid lava flow is not
Yeah,
reasonable.
no, but having catastrophically destructive earthquakes is not reasonable.
Sure,
Not catastrophically.
but you could keep
cracks in the wall.
But you could keep that
Yeah.
part of the plot exactly the same,
Yeah.
even with people freaking out and
Yeah.
trying to run out and people getting trampled. You
Yeah.
can keep
Yeah.
all that the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
without the destruction.
Yeah.
You cannot keep
Yeah.
the lava flow
Yeah.
as part of the
Lava
plot.
flow.
Like it's just that part of the plot is just not possible. Like it's not
Yeah.
feasible. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, and you would
It's
have
not
to have
anything.
made this a Mount Etna, a basaltic volcano.
Sure, but
Which
then you
doesn't
have all kinds of other things that are going on,
Yeah.
and that becomes way more nuanced.
No, I know. But this is the thing, like where I did my master's on Arenal, simultaneously you had basaltic flows, you had strombolian explosive eruptions, passive degassing, everything happening simultaneously from the one volcano.
Yeah,
No, we didn't have large paraclastic density currents. There was no glacier. There were no acid lakes. But yeah,
Yeah, you can get a large amount of activity, but this was like, what is every possible activity at any volcano in the world, and let's put it all in one
So what they missed
in
out
one
is
72-hour period.
They could have had a tsunami of the acid lake if the
Okay,
paraclastic
yeah,
flow
you're
had
right.
come
They
in,
totally missed
and
that
we could
one.
have had pH 0 tsunami or sesh wave.
Maybe
Yeah.
that was what
That's
needed
the
to happen
sequel.
with the grandma instead of getting out of the boat and
Yeah, it
She
pushed
rides a wave, surfs
Yes.
surfs
over
it, body surfs it, and
Surfing on
dissolves.
a
Yeah.
tsunami pH2 wave.
Well, again, at Cauigen and Poas, the two hyperacid lakes, pH was 0 to minus 0.5. Yeah.
but they're
Which is-
pretty tiny, weren't they?
No, Egen is a kilometer across.
Okay, I meant the other one.
Poas is still like 500 meters. It's sizable. It's like, so Poas is where the crafts actually rode out onto.
I
No,
remember
sorry,
that.
no. They did it at Egen.
Yeah.
They tried it at Poas, and the Costa Rican said, "No, you're insane. We're not letting you do this." So they did it at Egen, which
They-
was a bigger lake.
They
And then
were
winds turned
a little
on them, and
insane.
they got stuck for a while. Yeah, very.
Wow.
But
Yeah,
in a children's inflatable
Yeah,
rubber
Yeah,
beanie.
the plastic thing.
Yeah, but the rubber lasts longer. So you don't want to take the metal. The rubber will last longer. It doesn't dissolve. Their hands were destroyed because they were also using metal lines to fish down trying to get lake core and pulling it up. I saw the video. It was just insane. Yeah.
They
Two
were
chemists
crazy.
are nuts. Yeah.
They were just crazy.
Well, they had a different risk tolerance.
And eventually they paid for it.
And yes.
They didn't do any field work safety.
No, there was no
Field
field assessment plans on those ones.
So I guess you could say our field work assessment plans are similar to like the bioethics of like working on animals and people.
Yeah.
Except
Yeah.
back then they didn't bother like
They didn't
people.
bother. Yeah, whatever.
It's just my life, like whatever.
Yeah. Live fast.
Well, however, at some point you still gotta risk something. Even nowadays that
Sure.
you have higher demands, sometimes you just have to go.
But sometimes the risk is unaware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So like when I was at POAS, I almost went for a swim in pH 0 unintentionally
Yeah.
because I didn't think this was my first time working in a crater and had not done the due diligence and been working with someone to think about, okay, these are the actual risks involved, and went close to the edge of the lake with a thermocouple to take a measurement of the temperature, but thinking, oh, well, that looks solid. It wasn't. And I sank down up to my thigh in mud, acidic mud. But the problem was is I then lost balance and started to go forward into the lake. And the Ofsicori geologist I was working with, Jorge Baquero, grabbed me by the collar and just pulled me back and said, no, Glenn, you're not going for a swim now. But, you know, I didn't think that, oh, well, you know, this apparently solid material had been converted into clay. And so, yeah, that's where, again, accidents can happen.
Yeah, I think that one
And
of
it could have been a fatal accident.
Yeah, I think that one of the at least baseline security measures that everyone has to have is not going alone.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because in
Yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
situation,
Exactly.
yeah, you
You
need
never-
someone to pull you up. So
Yes.
I think that going along is one
Yes,
of the most
absolutely.
stupid things that one can do.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's unavoidable, but whenever you can avoid going
Yes.
alone
Yeah.
to a certain spot, no matter the level of danger, you should go in
Yeah.
with at least someone else, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Three is the charm.
Yeah, exactly. But that, I mean, it's the logistics, that's where it becomes difficult. But
Yeah.
absolutely, I agree. I mean, you should never be alone. I mean, just even before I got into volcanology, when a little bit of the summer jobs, and it was, okay, well, you know, split up, and you've got a radio, and the other person is maybe 500 or a kilometer. You know, typically it was less than a kilometer away. But, you know, you think it would be easy enough to trip, knock your head, lose consciousness, not be able to, you know, run into a bear or a moose, not be able to get to the radio. That other person doesn't know where you are. And, you know, they're not there to respond right away. And that's in a non-volcanic thing. You know, you're working on lava flows or, you know, in an active system, absolutely no way do you do that on your own. But I mean, you know, this is one of the things with like with New Zealand and the White Island eruption, where they had tourists involved. You know, even before that, the GNS Science, the New Zealand team, were already on a model where, yeah, you never went in solo, and you only went in for the least amount of time, you know, necessary to accomplish the job. That was, you never went in longer than was necessary, and you know, they became very, very conservative, especially after the event, understandably. How do you actually manage that risk? Because it's exposure. You're rolling the dice, and in those events where it could be something really ephemeral, some random steam blast that is pretty much undetectable until it's happened. The only way you can do is actually just think about it from a probabilistic perspective and minimize the exposure.
And in that sense, at some point in the monitoring agency of Ecuador, they were thinking when there was the Cotopaxi eruption, and people needed to go to Cotopaxi, mainly because the ash was covering the solar panels. So
Yeah.
the stations were dying just because they weren't getting enough power from the
Yeah.
sun because of the ash. So at that point, they were starting to think, maybe we should not only have the hazard maps for the population in which, okay, the whole Cotopaxi is obviously a risk zone for
Yeah.
pyroclastic density currents and the channels for the lahars, but let's have some more localized quote-unquote safety zones for scientists where, okay, if something, even though we are in contact all the time, even though
Something
we know that we are not to off when the signals are ramping up,
Yeah.
if something happens, where they can go, where they have the best chance, not like,
Yeah.
for example, in this movie, where
Yeah.
they try to just get out of the town by any means necessary, but try to find the best spot to be in case of danger.
Right. And was that actually considering like building safe, you know, like bunkers or just
No,
more?
no.
Here's the topography. If you have to go in
Yeah.
an area, this is more protected.
Something like that,
Okay.
more than okay, the
Yeah.
lava is going to come through these rabbis,
Yeah.
therefore keep away from
From
these.
these,
Try
yeah.
to go up this
Yeah.
way. The pyroclastic flows are probably going
Yeah.
to be channelized in these parts. Therefore,
Yeah.
try to get away from these.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think that makes
nice
way more
spots.
sense.
Yeah.
because that was the catastrophe with Merapi in Indonesia. Is they built these dams, these pyroclastic density current sabo works to drop them, but they were ineffective because they didn't effectively empty the
Yeah.
dams after
Yeah.
the eruptive phase.
So he went around the dam and above on the
No,
roof?
well, basically it just overflowed. So there was no longer a capacity because they didn't have the heavy equipment to empty the reservoir that had filled up with all of the material. So it was now half full instead of empty. The next episode of eruptive activity, there was less capacity. The
Just
flows were
overflowed, yeah.
more or less of the same magnitude, but there was now less space volume in the whole drainage network because those dams were full or partially full. So it flowed up and over.
Yeah.
And what they'd in fact done is built some safety bunkers for people who might be in proximity. And 2 or 3 people went into one of these things and it was buried by pyroclastic density currents. And in fact, I remember it was on the news because they were trying to get in there with heavy equipment to save them. But, it turned into an oven. It was a concrete bunker buried in however many meters of pyroclastic material, hot pyroclastic material. But in that case, if they had not built those debris flow catchment dams, the Sabo works, the regular rainy season would have cleared out the valleys. Yes, there would have been secondary impacts, but they were now being essentially returned to more or less the same volume for catchment. So, yeah, your building safety stuff is extremely costly, and you're better off actually just saying, don't go here,
Yeah.
minimize this, and all you're doing is mitigating risk.
Channelizing all the money into effective evacuation plans,
Yeah. Effective early warning.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the thing here. Like there was no alerting. In the
Yeah.
Canadian context, you get, this was the work that Yen, was looking at too, is for any natural hazard, any kind of evacuation, there is an evacuation alert and then an evacuation order. So when you receive the alert, you're supposed to be able to ready to go within a day. It's sort of, you're now on alert. You need to be ready to go should it transition. And then order is you're out of there. You need to go now. No ifs and buts. And in this situation, it was sort of, let's talk about this. Maybe we don't. Maybe we do.
Well, they had 2 days to
figure
choose.
it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but you don't put those decisions into voting in a
Yeah.
city council.
Yeah, no.
No, that happens at the state level.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and here's the evacuation plan. When you have time, read it. It's like, well, you see. But that's hindsight. You have to know that the volcano's there. It was only erupted 7,000 years ago.
Well, that's what happened. Well, not what happened, but in a similar, they didn't know that the volcano was there in Chile. Which was it, Chaitén?
Chaitén.
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
They actually, all the signals that they were detecting, they thought it was another
Volcano.
that they already knew it was active.
Yeah.
I remember we had this talk in the Cities of Volcanoes that they held in Puerto Varas from, was it the governor? The Ministry
Yeah.
of Response?
Yeah.
A high-end politician.
Yeah.
And he said, we received a call from the scientists, and the first good news is that it's not this volcano. Okay, great. No, but it's actually the Chaitén
Yeah.
And this politician had never heard of this name before.
Yeah.
So he said, okay, how bad can it be? I've never heard of this before, therefore it must not be a big volcano.
Yeah.
But it ended up almost
Being
wiping up
horrendous.
a whole town.
Yeah. 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 I mean, that's the thing too. When it's those volcanoes that don't have a history, a modern history, that's when
Yeah, you
things
don't
go
know what
really
to
badly.
expect.
On that sunny note,
Yeah.
it's late.
It's late.
I need to go to sleep.
Yeah.
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 We have real work to do in the morning. I have a real job. What's that laugh for? It's true. I have a day job. I feel that last little bit really could be a meme of my past PhD supervisor laughing at me. But that brings it to close. And yes, this is an extra long episode, and this will be probably the longest episode for a very long time. If you stuck all the way through it, thank you so much. Hopefully this was interesting. Just hearing a handful of experts talking about volcanoes, and probably the best volcano movie ever made, at least to this point. Speaking of which, if you were a film buff or someone who wants to make a movie with volcano in it, reach out. I'm pretty sure we could help each other. It'd be a lot of fun. Honestly, it would be a lot of fun. Alright, goodbye and good night. If you've enjoyed the episode, subscribe. And if you have subscribed already, thank you. Tell a friend. Look in the show notes for a Patreon account where you can help keep this podcast running, as well as a Discord server for those Patreons who just want to ask me more random questions. And if I don't know the answer, I'll do my best to find the answer, or perhaps find someone who could do it as part of an episode in the future. Thank you so much.
Lost in the fog of a cosmic storm, floating on whimsical wavelengths is the norm. Dancing through the stars, chasing spectrums of light, riding the waves that are just out of sight. In a world so chaotic that misbehaves, melodies that echo show us it's always. Colors intertwine, painting the sky. We're lost in the rhythm as the universe flies by. Oh, we're tuned in, feeling the beat of the unknown. Can you hear it? It's echoing through your bones. In this melodic maze we